Mary Austin is my name. Freddie and I have been friends for a long time. Mary Austin held Freddie Mercury's most important secrets for 33 years. She lived in his mansion and saw him date men. As he passed away from AIDS, she held his hand. She received his whole $1 million wealth. However, there was a darker secret. When he sold his house for $30 million in 2024, Mary finally told the truth. The world was astonished by what she disclosed about their relationship. Finally, the truth of what actually transpired between them is emerging. On March 6, 1951, Mary Georgina Austin was born in a modest apartment above a cobbler's shop on North End Road in Fulham. Her family was greatly affected by the cutbacks in Britain's coal rations the same week. Because both of her parents, Rita and Alfred, were deaf, fingerspelling predominated in their family rather than sound. They could feel their Bakelite alarm clock instead of hearing it. They had to pawn blankets every winter to pay for a 100-weight coal that lasted for only roughly 3 evenings because the rent, which was $210 per week, was frequently underpaid. Mary was already assisting her parents with power payments by the age of 7. She even bartered leftover bread for bruised fruit at market booths. Her focus was honed by her quiet upbringing. Her ability to lip-react 3 conversations at once was noted by her teachers, yet she talked so softly that her peers had to lean in to hear her. Freddie Mercury would eventually notice that little tug. London was a riot of color by 1966. However, Mary, who was just 15, was working at B.A.'s, renowned clothes boutique in Kensington, for $3 per week. She survived on tea, prepared with evaporated milk, and shared cigarettes in the stockroom, spending her days pinning velvet mini-dresses onto mannequins headed for celebrities like Twiggy. She swept past customers like MC Jagger and Marianne Faithfull. With a tape measure in hand, she pretended to be professional, but was secretly aware that some of the outfits were more expensive than her father's monthly salary. Bieber, however, was more than just a job. She practiced signing fashion words to her parents at night, drew window displays in a battered notebook, and committed Pantone hues to memory. In her diary, Mary wrote that the founder, Barbara Hulanicki's appreciation of her color sense was evidence that she could be more than the daughter of a deaf girl. Surrounded by clothing she could never buy, that little moment kept her daydreaming during the long hours. She began attending evening classes at Regent Street Polytechnic in January 1968, resolute in creating a better future. Half of her annual income, or $6 per term, was used for tuition. In order to make up for it, she worked late into the night, cleaning the Mayfair offices, scrubbing cigarette burns off the carpets till 1 in the morning after her shift at Biba. Before she fell behind on her payments, she only completed 5 of the 18 classes. She woke up at Cockfoster's one night after collapsing on the Piccadilly train, her knuckles bloodied from holding the mop too firmly. Due to weariness, she was admitted to Charing Cross Hospital. She had paid for lessons she never took, and there was no refund policy. She quietly tore up her registration slip and decided to take life as a lesson. She would later prove she had never needed those short orthand training when she would handwrite Freddie's lyrics as he sung them. While working at Tiny Shop in Kensington Market in the spring of 1969, Mary ran into a tall young man who walked in with a lot of energy. "It needs to be reinvented," he said, dropping a cravat on the counter. She stated the price tag, which said 10 shillings. He argued loudly, causing the stall holders adjacent to chuckle. Mary calmly retorted that he could undoubtedly afford it if he could redesign it so cleverly. Before he gave her the money and added tuppence for her trouble, They locked eyes over a pile of paisley. He then swept away, his cape billowing after him. She didn't find out until later that he was an art student and would-be rock singer named Farrokh Bulsara. Both of their lives would be altered by that brief meeting over a scarf. He came back a week later and asked her to join him at a little Italian eatery on Earl's Court Road. His order of tiramisu, calamari, and Chianti totaled $4.12, which was more than she earned in a week. He drew record cover concepts on the paper tablecloth as he was eating, indicating that he thought rock and opera could coexist. Mary was intrigued to his certainty, even though she acknowledged that she didn't know much about either. When the bill arrived, he pretended to be amused and dug inside his pockets before pulling out a single $5 note and giving the waiter the change near the bus stop. One day, he promised, he will take her to places where the menu doesn't include pricing. That vow was fulfilled in 5 years, when Queen's first gold record made it possible for them to live together in a Holland Road apartment. They paid $10 a week for a home at 26 Holland Road that was almost habitable. The room featured a mouse-gnawed carpet, broken walls, and no heat, to prevent rodents from scuttling onto the mattress. Mary used old milk crates to level the mattress. She could hear rodents scratching beneath them at night. She turned a single tin of beans into 2 dinners in the kitchen, which was merely a coin-fed hot plate set atop a wardrobe. Deep into the night, Freddie worked on songs on a beaten upright piano that was usually in a semitone flat. In order to prevent neighbors from complaining about the 3:00 a.m., Mary covered the windows with blankets. Music. Never revealing to the band that she was the reason the lights remained on, she surreptitiously utilized $3 of her $9 paycheck on Fridays to cover Queen's rehearsal facility. She joked that the first notes of 7 Seas of Rye were played in visible breath because of the frost that developed on the inside of the windows during the winter of 1972. The two of them established Bling Bang and Glitter, a little stand in Kensington Market, by 1971. The daily rent was $250. Mary purchased used dresses from the 1930s from Portortuella Road, disassembled them, and used Freddie's sketches as inspiration to create striking tops. They made $38 their best Saturday, which was more than Freddie made working at a grocery store for a month. Mary even used a borrowed Singer sewing machine to create Freddie's now iconic Harley Quinn jacket. A white satin cloak with 96 silver eyelets was one of her most ambitious creations. It cost $4.72 Stowe construct, but was later insured for $12,000 during Queen's 1976 tour. Brian May later credited Mary with enabling Queen's growth, stating that the funds from their stall enabled him to purchase his first Vox AC30 amplifier. Mary was the only outsider invited to Trident Studios as the band negotiated late-night recording time. She held her breath to prevent the microphones from picking up any sound as Freddie mixed vocals for Keep Yourself Alive on December 15, 1972. While she sat next to the mixing station. As the session's unpaid log keeper, she meticulously recorded the tape counter numbers whenever he aired. Freddie once inquired as to whether his voice sounded horrific or grand. Mary gave him the confidence he needed by telling him they were grand. Her cool demeanor, according to producer John Anthony, calmed Freddie more than any studio technique could. Her abrupt wardrobe change demonstrated the influence of rock star wealth, but it did not reflect her level of comfort. In Coeur, she admitted to a friend that she felt like a cardboard cutout. On January 14, 1977, AAR Is Born made its debut in Leicester Square. Photographers yelled Freddie's name, while Mary, half a step behind, clutched a bag she had borrowed from Queen's stylist, wearing emerald satin and Cartier jewelry. That December, Rudy's made fun of her $300 Manolo heels for sinking into cables backstage at the Englewood Forum. The glitter made her noticeable, but it also reminded her of how far she had come from being the quiet shop girl who once fixed Freddie's jeans. She chuckled, but wrote in her notebook, "Everyone else is wearing the costume. I feel like I am the costume." She witnessed Freddie test Somebody to Love at Hyde Park on September 18, 1976, tape a silver star to his chest for Earl's Court on June 7, 1977, and perfect the mic stand twirl that would define Live Aid 8 years later. From the wings, she also noticed more private moments, such as after the encore in Houston on December 11, 1977, when Freddie skipped their customary champagne and instead left with a group of club regulars. Mary had what every fan could only hope for, a pass that allowed her access to everything. She discovered that post-show invitations for the following spring's Japan tour now only named one guest, Mr. Mercury and a +1. And when she inquired as to whether she should arrange her own return airfare, Freddie kissed her forehead and advised her to reserve 2 seats. Taking the suggestion, she flew by herself. "I might join you, darling." After spending $72,000 in Edito period lacquer, Fortini on a Maggi Cloys charger, and $5,000 a week at Hayashi Kimono in Ginza. Freddie's passion for art became an obsession in 1977 and 1978, and the cheers of 20,000 fans could not conceal the silence between two people who had once shared a single takeaway pizza in a small bedsit. Later, Southern discovered 17 different auction catalogs in Garden Lodge, each with Freddie's neat handwriting, which included phrases like "must have" and "show Mary." Freddie frequently asked her opinion on Prince, but a moment later she outbid him. Mary acknowledged that the pieces were beautiful, but the constant flow was overwhelming. She once remarked that his inner sanctuary felt more like a museum with no closing hours. The turning point was when at 3 in the morning, Freddie's latest indulgence, which cost $1,100, was the lowering of an 8-meter bronze statue of the thunder god Ryan into the garden. Mary stood in the drizzle and watched the statue swing over the roses, thinking, "He's building a world I don't have the map for." On a March night in 1976, Garden Lodge fell unusually silent. At morning, she gently wrapped the acetate in her one and only wool coat and carried it home. Mary was also in charge of the band's finances when they were scarce. She maintained a tiny cash book with their ledger, which showed $22 in weekly costs compared to only $11 in revenue. She persuaded a Tottenham Court Road music store to rent a PA system from them for $60 per day, which they would pay after performances. The only reason they ate on many nights was because Mary brought day-old Chelsea buns that had been left over from Biba's Cafe. The band's van broke down its route to Torquay in July 1973. In order to pay for repairs, Mary pawned her grandmother's locket for $15. Months later, when Queen got their first record advance, she finally got it back. She was able to save 47 bisatins for the band at the end of that year in a joint account at Kensington's National Westminster Bank. Freddie proposed at Christmas 1973 with a simple 9-carat gold ring that he had purchased for $12 from a pawnbroker. He walked her onto the deserted stage after a Hammersmith Odeon show, bent down, and asked her if she would marry him when Queen's fame could sustain them. She consented, but demanded that they hold off until the band achieved a gold record. Mary believed that Garden Lodge, which Freddie had purchased for $500,000 in early 1977, would be their permanent residence. But after a few months, the 28-room home began to feel more like a private stage than their own. It was full of riches from Freddie: a wall-sized Andy Warhol print, a pair of Louis XVI gilt mirrors he purchased at Christie's for $99, $800, and a dining suite from the 18th century in Chippendale. The house was dubbed Versailles West by the local movers because of the frequent weekend deliveries of antique statuary. Mary later acknowledged that because she no longer recognized the rooms downstairs, she occasionally hid in the attic apartment she had previously referred to as a bedsit. By the end of 1978, Garden Lodge was treated like an after-hours salon by Freddie's expanding network of Japanese traders, club owners, and artists. Mary felt like a visitor who had forgotten the password, even though she had already selected plain cream curtains for the windows. Mary had bought used BA jackets on Kings Road for $3 apiece just a few years before, in 1975. 2 years later, she was wearing a 480 OC Clark gown and seated in the first row at Zandra Rhodes's spring presentation. Their home became both a haven and a springboard for Freddie's self-discovery, according to Mary's diary. Their last physical contact occurred on October 12, 1977, after Queen finished recording News of the World. Brian May later claimed that Freddie trusted Mary with the one thing that could have destroyed him in that tabloid era: his secret life, and that Mary waited up with tea to hear how it went. Their romantic chapter ended, but the bond remained unbreakable. Freddie, thrilled with his vocals on Get Down, Make Love, invited her to celebrate. They kissed and spent the night together. Mary felt that the closeness was coming to an end at dawn, and she never talked about it publicly until a private BBC interview in 1996, when she said she would carry that dawn in silence. Only a few weeks after Queen's historic Live Aid performance in early 1985, Mary Austin started to notice concerning changes in Freddie Mercury. He was losing weight despite continuing to practice constantly, and bluish spots occasionally appeared on his arms, which doctors had started to associate with Kaposi's seroma, one of the early symptoms of AIDS. On March 4, 1985, Mary took every booklet she could find about what the press was calling gay cancer to London's Gaze the Word bookshop, and that same evening she noted in her diary, Freddie losing flesh on collarbones. Research is necessary. The headlines surrounding her further heightened her anxiety. Mary realized that early detection might be Freddie's only chance, so she started keeping her own secret file at Garden Lodge, hidden away in a locked drawer. At the time, even whispering the word AIDS could ruin a person's career or friendships. By the end of that year, the UK had reported 2,348 AIDS cases and 1,320 deaths, more than half of those diagnosed. At that time, there was no effective treatment. On February 22, 1987, Mary drove Freddie to Brimpton Hospital at 5:45 a.m., choosing that time so staff would be changing shifts and less likely to notice him. Mary made all of the medical appointments in 1986 and 1987 in total secrecy, using her own phone number and booking Harley Street appointments under the name Frederick Bulsara Mack to prevent anyone from connecting them. Mary moved quickly after his test results came back positive on April 29, 1987, hiring a courier to bring ACT from New York, which was still an experimental drug, and paying $7,600 for a 3-month supply that was routed through Amsterdam so that Freddie's name would not appear on any British customs form. She even kept extra prescription pads in their Kensington safe, where she crossed out the barcodes so that pharmacies could not track them. The weight of keeping the secret weighed heavily on Mary, who from 1987 to November 1991 held the truth while rumors circulated. She also ensured that Queen's tour insurance covered unspecified chronic illness, a phrase that allowed for private medical flights without exposing Freddie's condition. Mary's planning gave Freddie not only privacy, but also time to continue recording. By 1990, newspapers were paying up to $500,000 for proof of Freddie's illness, which is roughly $1. In April 1990, tabloids ran long lens photos of Freddie looking weak, but she stuck to the explanation that he was tired from studio work. Freddie had pleaded with her not to tell anyone, saying that if one crack appears, the dam bursts. $2 million today, but Mary turned down every offer. She later said the stress made her feel as though she was protecting a nuclear core, and even the sound of a ringing phone could make her heart race. Believing it may be an accidental contact from a clinic, she lost 9 kilograms in 18 months, and she once stayed up for 72 hours straight before passing out next to Freddie's bed. But she remained silent until November 23, 1991, when Freddie made his own statement. Despite his deteriorating health, Freddie continued to record, and Mary set up evening sessions at Metropolis Studios from January to May 1991, so that the fourth treatments during the day wouldn't interfere. His lung capacity had fallen to 60%, so she used a kitchen timer to limit his takes to 25 minutes. Mary was outside the booth on April 13, 1991, when he recorded the eerie lyrics of "The Show Must Go On," with a drink of vodka mixed with fresh orange juice to ease his throat. Brian May later stated that Mary's meticulous scheduling was the only reason Freddie finished 18 vocal tracks that later appeared on the album Made in Heaven. She also persuaded producer David Richards to prepare mixes Freddie could approve from bed using a DAT Walkman. After Freddie's T-cell count fell below 50 by October 1991, indicating full-blown AIDS, Mary moved into Garden Lodge permanently on October 20th, converting the master suite into a private hospice. She oversaw a team of 5 carers, 2 nurses, and Jim Hutton, communicating closely with Dr. Gordon Atkinson regarding his morphine dosages. Mary put a bell on his bedside table so he could call for her any time he needed medicine, ice chips, or even assistance turning the pages of an art book. On November 22, Mary stood behind Jim Beach as Freddie dictated his final statement after he lost sight in his right eye on November 10th, and she ordered blackout curtains to protect him from the winter sun. When Freddie passed away from bronchial pneumonia on November 24, 1991, at 6:48 p.m., Mary immediately fulfilled his final wishes by putting his cats next to him and playing Queen's Barcelona on a Sony CF580 boombox. 3 days later, she presided over his private Zoroastrian funeral at Kensal Green Crematorium, which cost $3,500 and was attended by 35 people. She then gave it to Peter Freestone to be sent all over the world. In February 2024, London estate agents Knight Frank quietly put Garden Lodge up for sale for offers exceeding $30 million, shocking Queen fans because Mary Austin had kept the house nearly exactly as it was since Mercury's death in 1991. Since 1985, Mary has kept her promise that only she knows where his ashes were scattered. The buyer used a Cayman Islands company to remain anonymous, and there were soon rumors that the new owner might be a Middle Eastern royal who already owned Prince's former Purple House in Minnesota. She had preserved the citrus yellow dining room where he once hosted impromptu parties, along with numerous personal touches. Within 8 weeks, 3 wealthy collectors engaged in a sealed bid battle that pushed the final price to the full $30 million. Contracts were exchanged on May 27, 2024, with completion scheduled for early July. The most poignant moment was when Mary Austin left a farewell note pinned to the green door, writing, "I carried Freddie's absence in every room." The price, which was even higher than the average along the billionaire film Kensington Palace Gardens, was approximately $5,000 per square foot for the London real estate market. It's time to release us both. The bottom featured a hand-drawn phoenix that echoed Mercury's emblem and marked the conclusion of her 33-year vigil. Just months before, in September 2023, Sotheby's had raised $40.1 million, or 4 times the anticipated amount, for a rock and roll collection by auctioning off 1,400 items from Garden Lodge in 6 long sessions. Mercury's silver snake bracelet sold for $75,000. His Tiffany mustache comb brought in $152,400, and a graffiti-covered door from Garden Lodge with messages written in 33 languages brought $412. Some the most unexpected details were revealed by the catalog notes that Austin approved. Bidders from 70 countries competed for pieces of Mercury's life. Austin kept only 7 items for herself, including a jade antique Mercury had purchased during their most recent trip to Kyoto, and one early draft of Bohemian Rhapsody revealed that its original working title had been Mongolian Rhapsody, with a small sketch of Jimi Hendrix in the margins. Mercury's 1975 Mirrorball stage cape was discovered to have hidden pockets for throat lozines. In June 2024, Queen's surviving members sold their entire music catalog to Sony Music for $1 billion, or roughly $1.27 billion. Brian May acknowledged that he was unable to watch the auction, but Austin clarified that it was Freddie's last performance with the entire world in the front row. The sale was streamed live and attracted 1.2 million viewers, more than Queen's Wembley Stadium crowd in 1986. Mary Austin was granted 19% of Mercury's share as the executive of his estate by a clause in the agreement. Analysts calculated her cut to be around $187 million after taxes, placing her among the 50 richest women in Britain and surpassing Sir Paul McCartney's reported wealth of $150 million. Her advisors invested the majority of the money in a Luxembourg family office, with investments ranging from vintage Cartier jewelry to green energy bonds, the same market she had influenced through the Southern sale. Austin declined offers for a memoir and reality shows, citing a 1985 promise she made to Mercury. The money arrived the same week the Bohemian Rhapsody video reached the 2 billion view milestone on YouTube. After leaving Garden Lodge, Mary Austin slipped into what tabloids refer to as a life of quiet wealth, and, according to People magazine, her neighbors in a small village near the Cotswolds were unaware that she was the woman who once inspired love of my life. He had asked her to keep the mystery safe, saying that if the mystery ever died, the music would die. Photographers at Heathrow saw her boarding a flight to Zanzibar, Mercury's birthplace, in April 2025. But the pictures vanished a day after being purchased by an anonymous bidder. Her 2 sons avoid the spotlight and even use different names on electoral records. The house there is owned through a blind trust, and locals only know her by her initials, ATLMJ. Just as she used to move quietly behind the scenes while tens of thousands cheered for Freddie, she now lives in a way that lets the music shine while remaining nearly invisible. According to close friends, she wears a vintage Patek Philippe watch that ticks in time with the song "Somebody to Love." Mercury used to laugh about this detail in the studio.